Hello everyone, welcome back to today's story. In this video, we follow Diep, a woman who has built a quiet life raising little Nye with love and devotion. But peace shatters when Nye's grandmother suddenly reappears, accusing Diep of kidnapping and vowing to reclaim her granddaughter at any cost. What begins as a family dispute quickly escalates into lies, rumors, and an emotional battle for custody, one that threatens to tear Nye's fragile world apart. Stay with us until the very end to see how love, sacrifice, and determination collide in this storm. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support truly means the world to us. The first rays of morning stretch across the farm, seeping through the thin wooden shutters and painting the floorboards with streaks of light. The rooster crows in the distance, the familiar sound pulling life into another day. In the small room, Miss Diep kneels beside Nye, the little girl with bright, curious eyes and long black hair that shines like silk. The air carries the faint smell of rice husks and freshly cut grass drifting in from outside. Diep helps Nye with her toothbrush, holding the child's small hand and guiding it in patient circles. "Remember, slowly," she says softly, her voice warm like a lullaby. Top teeth, bottom teeth, inside, outside. Nye giggles when the foam tickles her lips, but she nods and tries to follow. To anyone else, it might look like an ordinary morning ritual, but to Diep, every moment with this child feels precious, like handling the most delicate treasure. When they finish, Diep crouches down, brushing Nye's hair into a neat ponytail. The child tilts her head, humming softly as she waits. Diep ties the ribbon carefully, her fingers trembling with a tenderness only a mother could understand. "There," she says, smiling. "Now you look like a little flower." Nye beams, her cheeks pink with delight. The day begins with simple tasks. Diep carries a basket, carefully collecting the last of the eggs laid by the hens. Nye follows behind, holding a smaller basket as though she too were a grown woman with responsibilities. The clucking of chickens surrounds them, mingling with the rustling of leaves as the morning breeze sweeps through the yard. Once the baskets are full, Diep lifts hers onto her arm. She looks at the farmhouse, the peeling paint, the creaking roof, and for a fleeting moment, sadness crosses her face. This batch of eggs marks the end of the season, and with it, another reminder that their life here is fragile. She takes Nye's hand firmly. "Let's go to the market," she says. Hand in hand, they walk down the dusty path, their figures bathed in golden light. To any passerby, they look like mother and daughter, bound by love and routine. But inside Diep's heart, worry brews. James has been away for weeks, buried in work, and though he promises to return, doubt gnaws at her. She keeps her smile for Nye, hiding the storm of her thoughts behind a mask of calmness. While Diep and Nye head to the market, another figure approaches the farm. The wooden gate stands locked, the midday sun glaring down on its rusted padlock. Standing before it is Nye's grandmother. Her frame is bent slightly with age, her face weathered from years of labor, but her eyes, sharp, determined, reveal a woman far from frail. She grips the bars, calling out, "Miss Diep, Miss Diep." Her voice echoes in the quiet yard, No answer. A neighbor, an older man leaning on a cane, strolls over. "She's gone to the market with the child," he explains gently. The grandmother exhales, her lips pressing into a thin line. She mutters that she has been too busy in the past, buried under the weight of work and family duties, and that this delay kept her from bringing Nee home sooner. Regret flashes in her eyes, but only for a moment. "I am here now," she says, more to herself than anyone else. "I will take her home. She belongs with me." The neighbor raises an eyebrow. "If that's how you felt, why didn't you settle the adoption matter earlier? Miss Diep, she's been raising Nye as her own." At this, the grandmother grows silent. The wind whips lightly at her clothes, but she doesn't move. Her heart knows the truth. She abandoned her chance long ago. But instead of confessing her guilt, she slips her phone from her pocket, her fingers trembling slightly. She dials, transferring a large sum, 100 million VND, to a name that she does not speak aloud. Her voice drops low, sharp as steel. "Help me fight. Get Nye back. When it's done, I'll give another 200 million. Her eyes flick to the neighbor. "Not a word of this to anyone," she warns, "especially not to Diep." Nearby, little Nye plays in the dirt, drawing lines with a twig, innocent and unaware that her future is being gambled in hushed voices. The grandmother watches her, her stern features softening as she gazes at the girl's round cheeks and bright eyes. But then bitterness returns, twisting her expression. "Diep tricked her," she whispers harshly. "She lured her in, claimed her as her own. But Nee is mine, my blood. I will not allow anyone to steal her." The neighbor looks uneasy, shifting his weight. The grandmother, however, stays rooted to the spot, her eyes locked on the quiet house behind the gate. The farm seems to resist her presence, its stillness pressing against her like a silent warning. But her mind is made up. As the day draws on, she finally calls Nee over. The girl skips to her side, smiling innocently, holding out the small blade of grass she had been twirling. The grandmother squeezes her hand gently, her voice lowering to a murmur. "We'll go home for now, child. Tomorrow, we'll return." Her tone is soft, but her eyes are resolute. Together, they walk down the dirt road, their shadows stretched long across the ground. Behind them, the locked gate stands tall, guarding a house filled with memories of warmth, love, and a bond that the grandmother now sees as theft. As evening falls, the farm comes alive again. The clatter of pots rings in the kitchen. Miss Diep moves quickly but carefully, setting plates on the worn wooden table. She places a steaming plate of rice and fragrant fried eggs in front of Nye, who claps her hands in delight before digging in. Diep watches her eat, her lips curving into a smile, though her mind is elsewhere. Her phone buzzes. James's name lights the screen. She answers, her voice soft but tinged with longing. On the other end, James sounds exhausted. His voice cracks under the strain of endless meetings and travel. "I miss you," he admits quietly. "And I miss her." Diep glances at Nye, who munches happily on her food. "She misses you too," she says. "She asked about you this morning." James lets out a heavy sigh. "I'll be home tomorrow. I can't keep doing this. I can't lose you both. Diep, if I keep choosing work, I'll lose everything that matters. Her heart aches at his words, though doubt gnaws at her. Just stay healthy, she whispers. That's all we need. But when James, in a moment of vulnerability, confesses that he fears Diep might not love him anymore, her hands freeze on the table. Her heart skips, torn between truth and comfort. She assures him she's still here, still waiting. But when the call ends, she stares at the phone in silence, her mind clouded with fear of the unknown. The oil lamp flickers, casting wavering shadows across the walls. Nee finishes her meal, yawning softly, before curling up beside Diep with innocent trust. Diep clears the dishes, moving with practiced calm, but inside her chest, her heart feels like a taut string stretched to its limit. Far away, James lies in his hotel room, papers scattered across his desk. His body is weary, but his thoughts belong only to Diep and Nye. He knows tomorrow will demand courage, not just from him, but from all of them. Back at the farm, the crickets sing into the night. The stars shine above, indifferent to the struggles below. Diep lies awake, staring into the darkness. She doesn't yet know what has unfolded at her gate, the accusations her neighbor has heard, or the determination simmering in Nee's grandmother's heart. For now, all she can do is hold Nee close, listening to the girl's soft breaths, drawing strength from the fragile rhythm of their shared life. But in the distance, a storm is forming, one that will test every bond, every promise, and every truth they hold dear. Tomorrow, the fight will begin. Morning rises again, but the peace that once wrapped the small farm is already unraveling. The grandmother returns, her steps heavier than the day before, determination carved into every line of her face. Her eyes scan the yard, searching for any sign of Diep or the child. The padlock is gone this time. The gate swings open, revealing the life inside. The chickens scratch at the soil, the breeze stirs the branches, and on the porch, a pair of shoes too small for any adult wait neatly side by side. She takes a deep breath, steadying herself. Today, she won't leave empty-handed. Not long after, Diep arrives with Nye, their arms full of fresh vegetables and leftover eggs. Nye's cheeks glow from the walk, her laughter ringing through the air. Diep, seeing the figure by the gate, stiffens. The grandmother steps forward, her voice low but edged with accusation. "You tricked her," she says, pointing at Nye. "You lured her into your house. You've claimed her as if she's your own. But she's not yours. She's my blood." Diep instinctively pulls Nee close, her heart pounding. "I never tricked anyone," she answers calmly, though her voice trembles at the edges. "Nye has been with me because she needed love, because she needed care. I have given her a home." The grandmother's voice rises, slicing through the still air. "You stole her. You kidnapped her under the guise of kindness. Everyone may believe your lies, but I see through you. She belongs with her family." Nye, wide-eyed and confused, clutches Diep's hand. The accusations sting, not because they're true, but because they cut at the very core of Diep's heart. The love she has poured into this child, day after day, night after night. Word spreads quickly through the neighborhood. By afternoon, whispers grow into rumors, and the grandmother's claim takes root. Miss Diep has kidnapped her granddaughter. Some neighbors, unsure of the truth, begin to question what they've seen. Others, who've watched Diep and Nye grow inseparable, shake their heads in disbelief. But in the court of gossip, doubt is enough to tarnish reputation. Inside the house, Diep paces the floor. Nye sits quietly at the table, her small fingers twisting together nervously. "Am I in trouble?" she asks, her voice fragile. Diep kneels down, holding her shoulders firmly. "No, my love. You've done nothing wrong. Don't listen to their words. You are safe with me." But Diep knows the truth. Safety is slipping away. The grandmother has made her move, and she will not stop until Nye is back in her arms, no matter the cost. That evening, James finally returns. His tired face brightens the moment he sees Nye running to greet him. He lifts her into his arms, holding her tight as though afraid she might disappear. But when Diep explains what has happened, the accusations, the whispers, the threats, his relief turns to fury. "She dares accuse you of kidnapping?" James growls. "After abandoning her for so long? And now she wants to tear Nye away from us?" He paces, fists clenched, his protective instincts boiling to the surface. "We cannot let her win." Diep shakes her head, her voice heavy with fear. "It's not just her determination. She has money, influence. She's already paid others to fight on her behalf. I don't know how far she'll go." Nye listens quietly from the corner, her little face pale. She doesn't understand the weight of money or the power of influence, but she understands the tension that hangs thick in the room. That night, when the lamp is blown out, she clings to Diep tightly, whispering, "Don't let them take me." The following days spiral into confrontation. The grandmother storms back, accompanied by strangers in crisp clothes, lawyers, officials, men who speak of rights and bloodlines. Papers are shown, documents waved in the air, voices raised in heated arguments. To them, Nye is not a little girl with feelings, but a possession, a battle prize to be claimed. Diep fights with the strength of desperation. She speaks of sleepless nights when Nye was sick, of laughter shared over meals, of the bond forged not by blood, but by love. Yet her words often fall against cold ears. "She is mine," the grandmother insists again and again, her voice as sharp as broken glass. "No matter what you say, she is mine." At the heart of it all, Nye is caught between two worlds. One, filled with the warmth of the woman who has raised her, comforted her, and given her a sense of belonging. The other, a grandmother, whose face she knows only faintly, but whose voice now echoes with anger and fierce resolve. James stands beside Diep through every confrontation, his voice steady, his presence strong. Yet even he feels the ground shifting beneath them. The grandmother's determination grows each day, and the whispers in the village turn into louder questions. Some begin to avoid Diep at the market. Others offer sympathetic glances, but little else. The fragile balance of their small family tilts dangerously. One night, after another exhausting day of arguments, Diep sits alone on the porch, staring at the stars. James joins her, his hand covering hers. "We can leave," he says softly. "We can go somewhere else, start over, away from her reach." Diep shakes her head slowly. Running won't stop her. She will chase us. She won't rest until Nye is with her. This is not just about custody. It's about proving that she can take back what she lost. and she will destroy me in the process if she must. Her words hang in the night air, heavy and unyielding. Inside, Nee sleeps fitfully, her dreams disturbed by fears she cannot name. Her small hand grips the blanket tightly, as though afraid it might slip away like everything else around her. The grandmother, meanwhile, sharpens her plan further. Each failed attempt only fuels her more. Diep thinks love makes her strong. She mutters to herself, but blood cannot be denied. She hires more help, gathers more allies, her eyes set on a single outcome. Nye will return to her side, and so the storm builds. Every glance, every word, every step around the farm becomes charged with tension. Diep feels it pressing down on her with every sunrise. James feels it in the way neighbors grow silent when he passes. Nye feels it most of all in the way adults around her whisper her name like it's a secret to be kept. The farm that once symbolized peace and belonging now holds the weight of a looming battle. The grandmother's vow echoes in Diep's mind. I will find a way to take Nee back. And though the night sky remains calm, the storm beneath it rages on, threatening to shatter the fragile bond that has held this little family together. For now, Nee still rests under Diep's roof, her breath steady and warm. But the question lingers like thunder on the horizon. How long can love protect her before the grandmother's determination breaks through? The answer waits in the days ahead, in a fight where the cost will not only be measured in money or influence, but in the scars left on every heart involved.